is it sexism when we have no barriers today? So we can pick what we want to pick.
Who doesn't have barriers?
Women don't have barriers?
Women, yeah. What's
We have
stopping
no
you? You can do
barriers.
whatever you want.
I can
you?
or you can?
What's stopping you?
Look at how offended these feminists are when a normal woman says women are free because we have no barriers. What kind of nonsense is this? Are you offended when someone tells you that you're free? If you are, you need to have a long, hard talk with yourself about what the word free means.
Should we mark this bad boy at all?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, here we go.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Liz Landers, I'm Vice News' chief political correspondent, and we are here today to talk about some of the biggest issues dividing women across the country. In other words, we're here to talk about feminism. First, I just want to say, we know we can't represent everybody's views, but we did try our best to bring together a diverse group of women today.
Disclaimers are stupid, but I think I'm beating a dead horse at this point, so that's all I'm gonna say about it.
In today's polarized world, is feminism dead?
Let's see. I don't think feminism is dead, which is unfortunate because I think feminism is annoying me a lot. Feminism has mutated into a tyrannical, hateful, resentful way of thinking that hurts everyone. Both men and women get thrown under the bus by feminism. It's polarizing everyone because feminists always say, "I don't need no man." And then they are always getting upset at women like me who don't believe and agree with everything they say. Feminists who are single get upset at housewives for existing. They make TikToks screaming about how housewives' lifestyles are wrong, simply because the feminist doesn't want to be a housewife. No one's ever said that all women have to be housewives. We have the freedom as women and people to choose what we want to do with our lives. But feminists love to pretend women don't have this freedom. Feminists also make TikToks complaining about the things men do, while claiming they don't hate every aspect of men. I constantly get irritated and annoyed by feminism because they're always hypocritical and mean to people who don't agree with them. I don't expect everyone to be nice to me, but I also don't need to be preached at by crazy women demanding I agree with them. I never ask any feminist to agree with me. I just go on with my life. Yet feminists always preach and preach and preach, through media usually, about how every woman needs to be a feminist. I feel like feminism is pointless because it's causing more division.
I saw your hand.
I think that depends on the definition of feminism. I strongly think that feminism is more of an action than an identity. I would say it's uplifting all women, in which case it's very alive. At the same time, if we do follow that definition, feminism has splintered off into so many different areas that you can look at people like Sheryl Sandberg who say you should just get another nanny if you feel oppressed. And if we're talking about that kind of feminism, yeah, it's pretty dead.
I have no idea what the hell Eli just said. A red flag that I saw when Eli was talking was,
I think that depends on the definition of feminism.
why are there different definitions of feminism? Why do we have this doublespeak shit? Feminism initially posed itself as equal rights between men and women, which we already have in America, even if these modern-day feminists don't want to believe it. Feminism now is what I described earlier. It is a bunch of women who demand everyone agree with them, then proceeding to hate everyone who dares to disagree. Another red flag I saw was that Eli didn't describe anything with the statement,
I strongly think that feminism is more of an action than an identity.
that doesn't mean anything. Feminists don't even know what feminism means, yet they constantly preach that everyone should support the feminist cause. How can you be so in favor of something that you can't even define? How do you know what you favor is worth favoring if you can't even define it?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the human race exists, feminism will never be dead. There's something that we're always going to have to strive and work towards to make sure that there's equality. So feminism is not dead.
I don't know that it can die. As long as there's power and oppression, there will be people fighting for equity. And until that somehow goes away, feminism is alive and well.
I think feminism isn't actually about equality. It's about equality when it benefits us. I think feminism is really about women wanting special privileges and treatment at the expense of men often. And I think it's alive and well, sadly.
I think feminism is also alive and well. There are different kinds of feminism, right? Like, that is obvious. And for me, as a womanist...
What the hell is a womanist? The suffix ist usually comes after things like sexist, racist, ageist, or ableist. If you're racist, you're discriminating against race. If you're sexist, you're discriminating against sex. If you're ageist, you're discriminating against age. And if you're ableist, you're discriminating against disabled people. If we follow that same pattern for the word womanist, is she saying discrimination against women? Is she saying that she discriminates against women because she called herself a womanist? I also had a thought about the word feminist after breaking down the word womanist. Does the word feminist mean discriminating against femininity? It might mean that because a lot of the feminists have rejected traditional feminine long hair and they like to dress in male-type pantsuits. They tend to reject all feminine beauty standards and they like to act really masculine, so maybe they are discriminating against femininity.
As a Black feminist, right, as someone who's really thinking about human rights, dignity, right, equity, right, as long as that need isn't met, we're still gonna keep fighting.
I'd say it's alive and well. I'd say that it's also very nuanced, and I think what it looks like is gonna differ depending on where you are in the world. For me, I just see it as a lens, which isn't necessarily antagonistic or protagonistic. It's just a useful tool.
Similar to what Pearl just said, I find that a lot of feminist ideology and thought today feels more of like a supremacist movement rather than something that is supposed to be advancing the goals of equality. I don't think that we can really term what's going on as feminism because it looks so different to, I think, the earlier feminist movements. So in that way, I would say it's taken its last breaths of life. It's dying.
I agree the most with what Sydney says when she describes feminism as a supremacist movement. When the feminists make the TikToks getting mad at women for being housewives, or mad at men for doing something wrong on a date, or whatever else they're complaining about, they have this air of entitlement about them. Like they have all the answers to life and everyone should just do exactly as they do. It's like they think everyone who does something different with their life is doing something wrong because they're not living life the way the feminist wants them to, which is an attitude of superiority. It's like feminists think feminism is the answer to everyone's life because they're convinced their ideology is the right one. They're treating feminism like a religion, and they're trying to evangelize feminism to everyone.
Yeah, I definitely think it's getting more and more radicalized, for sure. So it's definitely still alive.
I think I'll preface and say that I don't know so much about modern Western feminism, and there might be a lot of terms that I don't know, like political jargon and stuff. But I believe in the advancement of women, whoever considers themselves a woman.
Yelda alleges that she believes in the advancement of women, but then she throws in whoever considers themselves a woman. Why don't feminists understand that this undermines their whole cause? If the feminist cause is about female superiority, then letting men into that means that females can't exert superiority. Yelda is saying, whether she realizes it or not, that she believes in the advancement of men pretending to be women, as well as the advancement of women.
I think there's a deficiency in society. So it's deeply rooted that feminism has always existed. I think America's a little obsessed with themselves, and it's like always feminism is rooted in America. And like, oh, white women started it. And it's kind of offensive because for thousands of years, women have been dying for their rights.
Yelda complains that America is arrogant, thinking that we came up with the word feminism. But I doubt she knows where the hell that term even came from. So she's probably just participating in the obligatory America bashing we see from smug, annoying leftists. I went ahead and looked up the history of the term feminism and found that it came from a French philosopher named Charles Fourier, who first used the term feminism in the 1830s.
I think as a Black woman specifically, when you talk about feminism, the mainstream first thing you think about is a certain type of feminism that tends to exclude still, even today, even with intersectional feminism, exclude African-American women, and it's always kind of done that. And also upper middle class white women has predominantly been the face of what we quote unquote consider feminism.
Wrong. There was a Black feminist in American history, and her name was Sojourner Truth. She was an abolitionist and a women's rights activist. She was born a slave, escaped to freedom in 1826, then spent her life advocating for equal rights for all. She gave a speech entitled Ain't I a Woman?, where she talked about the lack of recognition towards Black women and the promotion of equal rights. It doesn't seem to me that Sojourner Truth let the fact that she was Black, or that she was formerly a slave, stand in the way of her fighting for her rights or her freedom. I don't know what the problem is with these modern feminists. It seems they don't know history and they're just hell-bent on complaining. Something else I don't understand is when feminists say it's for upper-class white women, or it's not for African-American women. That doesn't even mean anything because feminism is not a tangible object. It's an ideology, so everyone gets the choice whether to accept it or reject it.
I think feminism is attempting to say, okay, the first thing we agree on is that there are barriers and friction to what I need and what I want based on the fact that I'm a woman. What it ignores is that, and what privilege is that you may not have to think that being a woman and being a Black woman and being a Black woman who has a disability, for example, impacts you further. You have more barriers, you have more friction, you are less able to get what you want. You're undervalued in a way that's like, okay, well, that's life. That's what I mean by equity, and that we're able to, without friction, all get the same needs met.
Mindy thinks that no one should have any friction in getting things that they need. That's called getting handouts. If everyone was just given everything they needed without having to go through any friction, we'd all become big babies. This is exactly the concept of why spoiled children turn into spoiled adults. Men have friction in their lives too. It's ridiculous to me that feminists think men haven't worked their asses off to get to the point where they are today. Do feminists seriously think all men ever born were just given everything friction-free since the beginning of time? Tell that to Nikola Tesla, who worked his ass off in the field of electricity only to be beat out by Thomas Edison. Tell that to Henry Ford, Walter Chrysler, and Pierre DuPont, who all had car factories while FDR was actively demonizing them in the press for being too successful. Tell that to all the men who fought bravely for our country in both world wars. Tell these historical men that you think their lives were friction-free just because they were men. If they were alive today and some feminist said that to them, I would hope that these men would give these feminists the death glare for being so naive and ridiculous. Thinking that life will never give you friction is very unrealistic. Friction serves the purpose of character building, which could explain why Mindy doesn't have any character. Adversity is what builds character. I think that's why a lot of people have no character these days, because they don't go through any adversity. When they're faced with adversity, they complain, bitch, and outrage whine about it on social media instead of going through the adversity. As a result, we have a bunch of whiny adult babies who never get anywhere because they are incapable or unwilling to go through the adversity to get the character building that would make them better people. The left is always saying do better and be better, but then they reject the very thing that actually causes a person to become better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. I think life is easier if you're a girl. Actually,
you
I
can use
think
it as
there's a
an
lot of
advantage.
benefits that men don't have. I'm not going to speak anything to race. I'm just talking about gender specifically. It's usually like an excuse. Like, honestly, I think as a girl, you have equal opportunity in the world. I think there's benefits. Like, for example, we have quotas for women in specific jobs that are given to us that aren't given to men. So yeah, I would say it's easier being a girl.
I agree with Pearl. One thing that comes to mind is the free drink situation. When I was in college, I went to some bars, and they'd occasionally have ladies' nights. That meant ladies could drink for half price or sometimes for free, depending on the bar. But even when it's not ladies' night, if a girl goes to a bar, a lot of times guys will offer to buy you drinks, at least in the normal days. I know guys now are afraid to talk to girls because feminists have ruined that too, but you could technically drink free all night if you kept accepting drinks from guys. Guys can't do that and get that same benefit because girls would never agree to buy guys drinks all night. That's just one frivolous example, but it's a situation where girls have the privilege, but they don't think about it.
Just from a viewpoint over here, though, it seems there's a lot of pretty privilege in what you're saying, and that you're white and you present.
Do you think I'm pretty? Thank you.
I think Mindy sees the truth in what Pearl said about girls having it easier, but she doesn't want to admit that. So she deflects by accusing Pearl of having pretty privilege, whatever the hell that means.
I think that you present in a way that beauty standards have accepted. And so
They call me ugly on the internet all the time. They be roasting me daily, I swear to God.
I don't mean to say I think you're gorge. I just mean that there are a certain value that we give to certain bodies.
The amount of made-up privileges the left keeps adding on to the privilege pile is hard to keep up with these days. I don't even know what pretty privilege means, and Mindy doesn't clarify it at all. She says something about certain value that we give to certain bodies. I guess she means she values pretty people more than ugly people? It sounds like that hierarchy thing again, where the left values certain people more than other people. I really don't understand the left's obsession with putting people into hierarchies and tiny boxes while complaining that they don't like hierarchies. They clearly love hierarchies because they're always putting everyone in one.
I mean, let's also dig into why these quotas exist and why these, what you're calling
because we
privileges
want
exist.
special treatment.
No, it's because there have historically and presently in most jobs been fewer women and because of sexism.
Does anyone else find it comical that a man is on a feminist panel telling women that quotas exist because of sexism? Is there any other more perfect example for mansplaining? Even though I hate that term when it's used the way feminists use it, which is to demean a man for simply talking, I think it's appropriate here. Eli is mansplaining female workforce quotas to a bunch of women. What's even stupider is that Eli has been invited by Vice to sit with a panel of women to discuss women's issues while not being a woman. I guess Yelda's dream about feminism came true, which is that anyone who calls themselves a woman can participate in the feminist ideology. Why should I listen or care about anything this feminist panel has to say? They can't even acknowledge biology properly. You've damaged your credibility 6 minutes into the video, Vice. Not that you had any credibility to begin with, since I value you about as much as I value CNN, but this makes it worse. Because now your non-existent credibility is lower than it was before. Congratulations. I'm not going to take this feminist panel seriously because it couldn't even be bothered to take itself seriously when they invited Eli to be on it.
How is it sexism when we have no barriers today? So we can pick
has
what
no
we want to
barriers?
pick.
It doesn't have barriers.
Women don't have barriers?
Women, yeah. What's
We have
stopping
no
you? You can do
barriers.
whatever you want.
I
stopping
can
you?
or you can?
What's stopping you? As a woman.
As a woman.
As a woman.
See, that ignores a lot that I'm a woman with a disability. So there's a lot stopping me that you don't have to think about.
Well, as I
You don't
said
have to
before, I'm
think about.
speaking about women.
You're speaking for yourself.
You're speaking for yourself too, Mindy. Don't pretend that you're not. Every time you say women don't have barriers, we have no barriers. You obviously mean that you think your disability is your barrier, which is you speaking for yourself, Mindy. I'm going to talk about Helen Keller, a famous blind and deaf female author who lived in the 1800s. Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880 in Tuscumbia, Alabama. Helen caught an unknown illness when she was 19 months old that left her deaf and blind. Doctors called it brain fever because she got a high body temperature, but now doctors think it may have been scarlet fever. At the age of 6, Helen was examined by Alexander Graham Bell, who was working with deaf children. He suggested Helen and her parents go to the Perkins Institute for the Blind in Boston, Massachusetts, who could possibly help Helen. There, Helen was connected with a woman named Anne Sullivan, who became her teacher in March of 1887. The first word Anne tried to teach Helen was the word doll, but because Helen couldn't see the doll, she was not sure what Anne was trying to do, so she became frustrated. Anne took Helen over to a water pump, ran water over Helen's one hand, and then spelled out the word water into Helen's other hand. Helen then connected the dots of what Anne was trying to do and learned 30 words by the end of that day. In 1896, when Helen was 16, she went to the Cambridge School for Young Ladies to prepare for Radcliffe College. In 1900, Helen enrolled in Radcliffe and graduated in 1904 with a Bachelor's of Arts cum laude. Helen wrote an autobiography titled The Story of My Life, which was published in 1903. Helen did a lot of social activism work, starting in 1915 when she became a member of the board of directors for the American Braille Press. In 1920, Helen was a co-founder of the American Civil Liberties Union, and she also advocated for women's suffrage. In 1924, Helen joined the American Foundation for the Blind and worked for them for over 40 years. In 1946, Helen was appointed Counselor of International Relations for the American Foundation for Overseas Blind, and she visited 35 countries between the years 1946 to 1957 and met world leaders like Winston Churchill. She had a message of faith and strength that comes through adversity. Even though Helen was a socialist, and I despise socialism as a system of government, it doesn't discount anything Helen did in her life. She overcame her disability in astronomical ways, being an author of many books, essays, and speeches, while working to help blind and deaf people through many of the organizations she joined. The reason I bring this up should be obvious, but in case it's not, I brought it up because Helen had 2 disabilities that prevented her from living a typical normal life. Despite that, however, Helen overcame her disabilities and learned to function with them so successfully that she was able to go so far as to travel to 35 different countries. Mindy's disability doesn't have to be a barrier for her. Having a disability doesn't automatically mean you can't have a full life. Isn't that what leftists would call an ableist argument? That their own thoughts about themselves having a barrier because they're disabled means they're thinking that only abled people can do stuff? I'm tired of modern day feminists complaining about everything being hard and impossible to overcome to the extent that they never fucking do anything except complain.
Speaking as an able-bodied
white woman.
I
that is
understand.
white.
Represents white.
Of course, there's going to be other barriers if you're disabled. I'm sure. Like I'm talking about as a woman.
So you're
I
just
would
going to
agree.
ignore
White
the
women
pay
have it
gap.
easier. Yes, I would agree.
What?
You're just going to ignore the pay gap, regulation over bodies.
Pay gap has been disproven and debunked
the pay gap doesn't
endlessly,
exist.
my friend.
It doesn't.
that's so
It's
funny.
the industries that women pick.
Let's talk about it.
There's a pay gap, but it's because women don't want to do the hardest industries.
Feminists love to complain and allege that the pay gap is because the law allows women to be paid less than men. That is a lie. Did you know that on June 10th, 1963, a law was passed called the Equal Pay Act of 1963, signed by President John F. Kennedy? Quoting from the bill, "No employer having employees subject to any provisions of this section shall discriminate within any establishment in which such employees are employed, between employees on the basis of sex, by paying wages to employees in such establishment than the rate at when he pays wages to employees of the opposite sex in such establishment for equal work on jobs the performance of which requires equal skill, effort, and responsibility, and which are performed under similar working conditions, except where such payment is made pursuant to a seniority system, a merit system, a system which measures earnings by quantity or quality of production, or a differential based on any other factor other than sex. In plainer language, it means that no employer can pay an employee less based on their sex. Employers have to pay an employee for equal work for their jobs. Payment difference can happen if there is a seniority system, meaning that people who have worked at the company longer will be paid higher due to natural raises. If there is a merit system, then employees will get paid higher based on promotions. Payment can also be higher or lower depending on the quantity or quality of production. So if you don't do your job, an employer isn't required to pay you high wages for shitty work. If you want higher pay at your job, use your skills to increase the quantity or quality of your work, which can get you promotions and raises. If there is any other reason that you cannot do your job, such as tardiness or unprofessionalism, then the employer also doesn't have to pay you higher. This means you should be respectful at your job, go to work on time, be professional. The alleged pay gap is not about sex. The pay gap was a statistic where salaries of women in the workforce and salaries of men in the workforce were all lumped together, averaged out, and the number they came up with was what they called the pay gap. Similar jobs were not compared. Similar job positions were not compared. Hours worked were not compared. Years in the same job were not compared. And many other things that could give you a more accurate representation of how men and women are paid were not compared. The alleged pay gap is a shoddy, misinterpreted piece of shit statistic that has been spread as propaganda around the country. If there is any company who is paying a woman less based on the fact that she's a woman, it would be illegal. They would be breaking the law and a woman could sue her employer for it.
I don't think it's that simple. I think that's an oversimplification. I think the fact of the matter is that women structure their lives differently to men. Men don't give birth. Men don't have to carry pregnancies. Men don't have to be the primary caregiver most of the time. Women also don't hold jobs for as long as men do. They often will stop and start. They'll go back into work. They'll take time off. They'll take part-time jobs. The way that men work and women work are astronomically different. And to try to say that they're comparable is where this issue comes from. They're not comparable.
Sydney brings up the fact that women have to take time off for pregnancy. Women take more part-time jobs, and women go in and out from the workforce differently than men do. I think Sydney has a point. When it comes to women taking time off for pregnancy, they need some rest and personal time away from the workforce to take care of their newborn. Some women breastfeed, and lactation happens when milk sometimes leaks through a woman's shirt. Some women may choose to stay at home during the time when they're lactating to avoid embarrassment at work around other people. Every woman who has kids figures out for herself how much time she wants to take before going back to work. Leftists want to blame sexism, but I have already established that it is illegal in the United States to pay someone differently based on their sex. No one disputes that disparities happen. Leftists will claim that because no one disputes disparities, that means their sexism claim is true. However, this is a lie. Problem with leftists is that they want to lie about the reason disparities happen, because if leftists acknowledge real reasons like personal choice, then their cause that sexism causes the wage gap falls apart. There are 3 reasons I can think of that disparities exist in this case. The first is that women take time off work when they have kids. Initially, when the woman was hired for the same position as a male coworker, she would get paid the same. If the woman and the man both worked for the company for 5 years and they both had the same merit, skills, and productivity to the point where they both got annual raises, they would both have the same pay. Now, if the woman gets pregnant in the 6th year while at that company, for example, and decides to take time off, but the man keeps working throughout the entirety of the 6th year, the woman will fall behind in her pay. It is not because the company is saying, well, she's a woman, she only gets $1, but the man over here gets $10. That's wrong. It's the fact that the woman took, let's say, 2 months off in the 6th year of her job and she missed out on 2 months of her pay, while the man gets those 2 months of pay because he didn't take time off. The second scenario is that the woman may not go back to the same job after she's ready to go back to the workforce. In that case, she would find a different job, maybe at a lower position, which may have less pay than she had at her previous job, which she held for 6 years. This would explain why this woman would make less in her new job than she did in her previous job. But in the context of her new job, if she was hired at the same time as a male coworker in the new job, they would start with the same pay. The comparison of her making less in her new job than her old job is not what we should be comparing. But I know leftists do this a lot. They like to say, well, she got paid less here at her new job compared to her old job, so that means pay gap. So I'm saying this to reiterate the leftist tactic of comparing apples and oranges and claiming they're the same thing. The third scenario is that the woman may decide to go out of the corporate workforce entirely, choosing instead to take a stay-at-home job or part-time jobs, both of which would also account for more scattered and lesser pay than if she was in an office environment. These three scenarios account for the pay gap statistics that feminists see, but none of these scenarios are because of sexism or discrimination, because the United States law once again says it is illegal to pay someone differently based on their sex. Sydney's second point, that women take more part-time jobs in comparison to men, I think is true according to how I worked. I took a lot of different jobs throughout my life to pay the bills. I do have a career path that I want to get into, but it isn't an easy industry and there are lots of breaks in between. So part-time jobs are helpful in between the breaks. I also worked a few temporary jobs because I needed something short and sweet for a few weeks. I chose how I wanted to work, so I do not feel like me being a woman stops me from participating in the workforce at all. I worked at a construction site for one of my temporary jobs, building a tent for a farm expo show, and I was treated really well, and I had a lot of fun. Feminists will complain that male-dominated industries are rampant with sexism and discomfort for the woman. I'm here to tell you that's a damn lie. I never had any problems with the men in that temporary job. I ate lunch with one of them every day and actually became friends with him. I wanted to give you real-life experiences from my own life because I am frankly sick and tired of "there's a pay gap caused by sexism" argument, and I want you to understand the reality and the truth of what is actually going on when feminists complain about a pay gap.
Two things. First of all, let's dig into why they think that they should take these jobs, which is societal sexism. And then also, Department of Labor, all statistics, at least speaking in the US, have found that when compared for the same jobs, there still is a pay gap, particularly when it pertains to race.
Eli claims that women think they should take part-time jobs because of societal sexism. What does that mean? I am an actor, and that career path has ups and downs. Sometimes I'll be very busy with acting, sometimes I'll have downtime. So I need short part-time jobs to fill in those downtimes. That has nothing to do with sexism. In college, I chose part-time jobs because I had to work in between class times. Those jobs were perfect because I could work for 2 hours, go to class, and then go back to work for a few more hours. The long 8-hour workday full-time job didn't work for me while I was in college, and it doesn't work now with me having acting as a career. Logistics and scheduling are the reason I chose part-time jobs, not sexism, okay? I don't feel pounded down by societal sexism. You know who I do feel pounded down by? Are feminists, because I have to keep fucking explaining common sense everything to you guys. Feminists telling me that societal sexism influences me and how I take part-time jobs. No, I know why I took the jobs, okay? I'm not a moron, and I'm annoyed that feminists keep pushing this narrative that women are helpless morons who just fall over the second society touches them. Society can eat me. I kick society's ass, okay? I live in society pretty fucking fine. And it's a wonder I do, because feminists are all over society annoying the piss out of me.
Because 60% of women have never asked for a raise. So how can you complain about your pay if you don't ask for it?
Why are they not asking?
Wait, what happens when women ask for raises? Sorry, I've been wanting to say something, but I want to be respectful of. I don't want to interrupt people, and I want to let them finish their thoughts.
Jump in,
but you know,
go
it's
through the
just,
wall.
I'm gonna guess that because a lot more women take part-time jobs and switch jobs frequently, that would be why women don't ask for raises. A lot of part-time jobs will have an automatic raise system for both men and women, so neither have to ask for a raise. At my part-time jobs, I always left the job at a higher pay rate than when I started because I got raises throughout the time I was working there, and I also got a promotion. Just because someone doesn't ask for a raise, that doesn't mean they aren't getting raises. The feminists here are probably only thinking about asking for a raise in the full-time corporate high-powered job environment. In that environment, the employee has to advocate for themselves when it comes time for their job evaluation. The reason is because the raises at high-powered jobs often involve thousands of dollars, so the employers want to make sure the employee will deliver the production they need to make their salary worth it. Like I said in the 1963 Equal Pay Act, the quality or quantity of production is one major reason people get paid the money they do.